Hey there, welcome back to my YouTube channel for another book review. Today we are reviewing So Let Them Burn by Kamilah Cole, which is a 432-page YA fantasy novel inspired by Jamaican culture. I promised you all I would keep this one shorter than the last, so let's dive on in. I'm going to start us off by reading the summary. There is nothing that Farron won't do for her sister. Farron Vincent can channel the power of the gods. 5 years ago, she used her divine magic to liberate her island from its enemies, the dragon-riding Langlish Empire. But now, at 17, Farron is all powered up with no wars to fight. She's a legend to her people and a nuisance to her neighbors. When she's forced to attend an international peace summit, Farron expects that she'll perform tricks like a trained pet and then go home. She doesn't expect her older sister, Alara, forming an unprecedented bond with an enemy dragon, or the gods claiming that the only way to break this bond is to kill her sister. As Farron's desperation to find another solution takes her down a dark path, and Alara discovers the shocking secrets at the heart of the Langlish Empire, each must make difficult choices that will shape the other's life as well as the fate of the world. We'll start with the characters and their development. So in this story, we have two main characters. They're sisters, Farron and Alara. The book is written in dual point of view. Farron is her sort of honorary title. Her title in the book is the Child Empyrean. She is touched by the gods, and she's considered a savior of her people. So she's very recognizable. She has status wherever she goes. Her sister, on the other hand, is the older of the two, a very capable fighter, wields their ancestral magic very, very well, but lives as the responsible one and feels consistently in her sister's shadow, just by virtue of her sister literally being famous. We'll get into a little bit later why she is called the Child Empyrean, but it has to do with events that took place before the book starts. In terms of sort of generally these characters and their development, very, very well written, very distinct personalities. The two sisters are two very fleshed out different people, so that's always great to see. There's also really, really solid growth in Alara's character. She is the one who you see sort of outside of their natural habitat, their, familiar locations the most throughout the novel, and you see some really nice growth in her, whereas Farron stays kind of consistent throughout the book. I would say from the beginning to the end, there's growth in like one aspect of her life, but overall she remains mostly unchanged. And on one hand, that's great, right? Her sister is a strong motivator. She loves her sister, really wants to protect her sister, wants her sister to be safe. That drives literally everything that she does. But would have loved to see similar growth in her like I saw in Alara. That said, there is a role reversal that comes towards the end of the book that I think sets up the sequel, which is the second in a duology, for that growth to happen to Farron, right? So recognizing this isn't a standalone novel, can totally see how Farron's character journey is going to potentially take a little longer, because even though this is a dual point of view book and the two characters get just about the same amount of page time, I think because of Farron's history as the Child Empyrean, she feels slightly more main character than her sister does. So it would make sense that her arc kind of spans both books. And I don't know what to say about Alara as it relates to book two. Obviously, I'm sure she'll have some more growth to do as well, but in terms of what we see in book one. There are also some secondary characters that are around a lot. One, that's not the word I was looking for, but it's fine. One of them is Queen Aveline. And then the other two are Signy and Reeve. Signy and Reeve really stand out. They're the love interests, which is super great. I don't think that they need point of view chapters at all in this series, but I did kind of feel like something was missing in the development of their respective romances, just because the book is so internal to Farron and Alara that we only see it, and that's not uncommon, right? But when you think about a traditional romance novel, usually you do get the split between the two interested parties. When you get, when you have a book that's written in third person, you have the capability to kind of see a little bit through every character's eyes. And this, I think, I just would have liked to see more where Signe and Reeve were concerned as it relates to the romance. Not to them as characters, period. I think they're very well done as characters. I think they have interesting backstories. Their characters are true to the history that they were given. It's specifically as it relates to the romance. Queen Aveline, for me, I mean, I think she was fine. She's important to the plot and the internal story, but I don't feel like she takes up too much page time, so I don't have a whole lot to say about her. I think she's just, she's a character. She plays her role. It'll be interesting to see if the author does anything different with her, or not different, but more with her in book 2. But in this first one, I think you kind of understand her a lot in relation to the history that happened before the book that is kind of shared with you. But yeah, she doesn't really stand out to me one way or the other. In terms of plot and pacing, I thought the story overall moved. It wasn't like I can't put this down for me, but I was engaged throughout the whole book. As I said, I thought Alara's growth was stronger and her experiences were more external in terms of who she was surrounded with, the sort of new experiences that she was presented with. I think because of that, it feels like her parts maybe moved a little bit faster than Farron's did, just because Farron's character journey, like I said, stayed fairly stagnant throughout the book. In terms of the romantic aspects of it, I think both journeys kind of, they were a little predictable, but like I said, there is a role reversal at the end that I think will switch things up a bit, right? So things that were very predictable in this first book, I think are going to be upended in book 2 because of that role reversal. So looking forward to that. And then in terms of the world building, I mean, as a Black American who is disconnected from her ancestral history, I love books that are built on cultural history. And this one is built, as I said before, off of Jamaican culture, and it's just so nicely done. It's rich in texture, the foods and the clothes and the customs. Their ancestral magic is great. You've got dragons, biological dragons. You've got mecha dragons. So there's this, you often see one or the other, right? It's either we're going mythological creatures or we're going mecha. This has both, which I think is so cool because there's history and lore built in for why or how those two creatures can fight one another, are impervious to one another. As I said, the world building is just super, super rich there. And I mentioned before that Farron is called the Child Empyrean. So what happens at the beginning of or before the story, I should say, is that there was essentially a civil war that happened 5 years ago. So everyone is still kind of reeling from that. Farron was essentially their savior. That's where she got her ability to speak to the gods, where she became the Child Empyrean, was their deliverer. None of this is a spoiler. You learn this right away at the start of the book. And it just, everything that happens in the book stems from what happened those 5 years ago and the aftermath. And you can tell that the author took such care, there was such attention to detail to make sure that all of the characters were true to what happened before we get to page 1, that everything in the story stems from, has grown from that moment. And of course, before, right? Like something had to lead up to a war. War doesn't just suddenly break out one day because nothing is wrong and we're in a utopian society. But I thought that, the world building, the magic system, all of that built off of Jamaican culture, steeped in the crafted history of these different states and islands was just very, very, very well done. So all that to say, like, I thought it was a great book. I'm definitely excited to read the next one, which comes out next week, I believe. So if you haven't read So Let Them Burn by Kamilah Cole, I suggest you do so, and I suggest you do so quickly so you can get to the next one. I know one of the things I often do is I'll read a book and then like 2 years later, I'm like, oh, maybe I should read the sequel. But by that point, I've practically forgotten everything that happened in the book because I've read so much in between them. So that's my review for So Let Them Burn. Really, really great. Strong world building, strong magic system. Really great start for a debut author. Really excited to read book number 2. I hope you all pick it up. If you do, would love to hear what you think in the comments, and I'll see you at the next review.